All right, so we're writing equations that are parallel to a line that go through a certain point. So this is our first line. This is y equals 2x plus 4. Okay, we could graph that. And then what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what's the equation of a line that's parallel to this line, but then goes through this point. Okay, well, we know a parallel line has to have the same slope. So let's find our slope here. Well, the slope of this one, y equals mx plus b, it's the one in front of the x, so it's 2. So the slope of this line is 2. So the slope of our new line also has to be 2. Okay, so m equals 2. Okay. Now, for this one, we're going to use point slope form, right? Because we have a slope, we have a point. Now, all we have to do is plug it in. So point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And we just plug in what we know. All right, so we'll y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, we already know the slope. So the slope is going to be 2. And now we just plug in this point, right? So this right here is y1, and this is x1. Okay, this is the y coordinate and the x coordinate. So we put -3 in here, -5 in there. And now all we do is just simplify it because, you know, in math, we don't like to write minus a negative, okay? So minus a negative, remember these two cancel each other out, and we really end up with y plus 3 equals 2 times, well, x minus -5, so that's x plus 5 because those cancel out. So the equation of a line that's parallel to this line that goes through this point is this: y plus 3 equals 2 times x plus 5. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Now that I wrote on top of it, it's all good. All right, so we had this equation here, y equals -4x. Okay, so what's the slope of this line? Well, that's what's right in front of x right here. That's -4. So the slope of our new line is also going to be -4 because we're trying to write one parallel. Okay, so we're just going to fill in what we know. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we know the slope. That's m, so that goes right here. Now we know the y coordinate is 5. And the x coordinate is -5. And now we just go through and make sure we don't need to simplify anything. So we go y minus 5, that's good. That's how we write it in math, just y minus 5. Time equals -4 times x minus -5. Again, we don't like to have minus a negative because these two kind of cancel each other out, and you have x plus 5. So that is the equation of a line in point slope form that is parallel to this line and goes through the point -5, 5. Let's take a look at lines that are perpendicular. Okay, so here we have this line. What's the slope of this line? Well, it's -1/4. Now we want a perpendicular slope, right? So for a perpendicular slope, we have to have an opposite reciprocal. So an opposite means we change the sign. Okay, so instead of negative, we're going to have a positive. And then reciprocal means we flip it. So instead of 1/4, we're going to have 4/1. And, you know, this, you don't have to write it +4/1. We can just write it as 4, right? Okay, so here we have y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And we fill in what we know. Okay, so we know that the slope is 4 because that would make it perpendicular to that line. And then we know it needs to pass through this point. So the y1 is -11. So y minus, oh, we'll do it this color, -11. And x minus -2. So we plug those in, and then we just simplify. So we just look at this and say, well, minus a negative isn't really the right way to write it. We actually write y plus 11 equals 4 times x plus 2. All right, let's take a look at this last one. So we want a line that's perpendicular. So that means we want a slope that's an opposite reciprocal of this, right? So it's negative right now. So the opposite would be positive. We just changed the sign. And the reciprocal means we flip it. So that would be 3/2. So the opposite reciprocal of negative 2/3 is positive 3/2. So now we just write this equation. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so we have the slope. That's 3/2. And then y1 is -1 and x1 is -6. And then we just simplify. Y minus -1 is really y plus 1 equals 3/2 times x minus -6 is really x plus 6. So there you go. That's how you write an equation that's perpendicular or parallel to a line in point-slope form.